I don't want to talk about hate. I want to talk about love. Okay.
So this came out because last week I was like, maybe let's talk about serial killers. And I'm unprepared this week because I wasn't anticipating my husband having pneumonia and having to move my entire house in 2 days. And I'm sorry I left this all on your shoulders. And you should have told me yesterday that you wanted to talk about love.
I didn't know that until today. So I was like, okay, I can do this. I'm going to research. And then I thought about, okay, which serial killer? And I even sent you a list of all the serial killers that have the exact birth time. And then I'm going to just show you what I found. So then
you were like, there's like 100 serial killers in France. The French are fucking crazy. You're like, there's 100 serial killers in Pakistan. These people are fucking crazy.
The Pakistan one was crazy because they gave him the sentencing that he did to his victims, which I thought was also insane.
That's genius.
So, yeah, well, they I don't know, yeah, they sentenced him because this guy abused kids and then cut them up and put them in acid. And then his sentencing was to cut him up and put him in acid as well. And I was like, whoa. Okay, they take it serious.
Oh, fuck.
They take it really seriously. So my thought process yesterday, then I was like, okay, cool. I got the list. And then I thought, okay, which ones actually have accurate birth times? So one of the first ones I found was this one.
Jeanne seconds. You were, wait, hold up. For anyone watching, you were on your profile for a second, and I was like, are you trying to tell me something?
I'm going to show you my profile in a second because I was like, why do I want to talk about love?
Okay.
So that's why I was like, okay, I need to figure out what is going on today.
Continue.
So the first person I found was Jeanne Weber, or Jeanne Weber, because she's French.
With a German last name, okay.
Yep. She was born in France, and apparently they have an accurate birth time, which I don't really know how, because she was born in 1874. And already I wanted to, if we talk about serial killers, I somehow wanted to be in that timeline, because I already mentioned to you the one that I really want to talk about is Jack the Ripper. But as no one knows who it is, we couldn't really talk about that one.
C'est pas possible. C'est pas possible.
Exactly. So he was, or she, we don't know, he or she, was someone that was interesting me, has always interested me. So then I thought, okay, who else is in that timeline? And H.H. Holmes is another one that I find very interesting. But I also don't think that there is an accurate timeline of his. I didn't even go into checking for that one. But maybe we will cover him in the future. And then I went to Astro Theme, and they kind of have a collection of all kinds of stars and serial killers and everyone that's remotely famous. So she was one that had an accurate birth time, apparently. And she is someone who I couldn't find that much information about. Thankfully, I speak French, so most YouTubers that were covering this part were speaking French. And the history behind her is basically that she killed a lot of kids. So the first death that she was connected with was the death of her own 18-month-old child. They said that it could have been natural causes. In hindsight, they said, okay, it might have been not so natural after all. And she was babysitting a lot of kids as well. So a lot of those kids ended up dead. She ended up strangling them.
That's horrible. I've only heard of adults doing that with like pretending to be nurses and then like taking care of like older adults and then like nixing them. But damn, with kids?
Yeah. So she was babysitting them, a lot of the family kids as well. And somehow she decided to start killing them. And I have no idea why. I mean, we couldn't really find out the why. There is a lot in her chart that may be pointing towards the why, but if we don't really know her history, it's a bit difficult. But so this was the first one. And if you can look at her chart, if you see her chart, everyone that's watching, you can see that the connection 5027 is all in her nodes. So again, we could also, if we go back to the theory of maybe the nodes shouldn't really define something in the chart, then she would be a reflector. But even then, she is a very open profile. Everything else is undefined in her chart. Nothing is completely open, but everything is undefined in her chart except for her sacral and her spleen. So there's a lot of hanging gates and a lot of potential as well for example, she has the 34 defined, but she doesn't have the 20, so it kind of pushes her to act in the now. And she has the 48, but not the 16, and this is all about skills. So she may have felt inferior, also connected to her undefined ego being, her ego being undefined, that way around. There's a lot of potential. I don't feel good enough. She's taking on the emotions of everyone around her as well. She takes on the pressure of everyone around her as well. Maybe she was just not able to cope very well with the kids in some way. Maybe there has been some previous trauma. This is something that I had found. So she got pregnant from one of her husbands. I think she had one, maybe two. Not sure. But one after another. But I think she got pregnant and she had an abortion. And I hope I'm not confusing it because I read a lot about many different serial killers on this path of trying to figure out what to talk about today. And the suggestion that one of the YouTubers said, I'm pretty sure it was about her, but the suggestion that one of the YouTubers had was that losing that child also made her lose the partner that she had. So she kind of connected these two things. And I'm right now wondering if maybe she did give birth to the kid, but the partner went away. So there was some kind of connection with the kid having that child or not having that child and losing her partner. And the YouTuber suggested that kids brought up this memory over and over again in her. So every time she was alone with the kids, she thought that if she was able to kill that child, essentially, to save the relationship of the married couple. So this was something that I thought was very interesting.
Dude, some people just need a therapist. I know it wasn't a thing then, really, but wow. She just needed to talk through some shit.
Yeah, very true. So this could have been one of the traumas that have just lingered on and been okay, maybe that was a reason for her to go around. There is no good reason to do that, but maybe that was a background reason of why she did that. I don't know how to say that, but yeah, it's not a good reason. It's just maybe something that catapulted her into action.
That makes sense for her own kid, but why kill other people's kids?
Yeah, I don't know.
You're just ooh, felt good, loved the rush, let's keep going. I don't I can't relate to that at all. I don't understand.
Yeah. No, relating to people like this is anyways very difficult, if at all possible. So yeah, this was the first one that I was diving into. And then I could still not really connect much to her. And then I found something really cool while I was on Astro Theme, because I just typed in serial killer and a lot of serial killers came up, as I had sent you the list, One of them I didn't send you, though, which was Marc Dutroux. Yeah, I misspelled his name. So Trudeau was the guy, and I found him because I actually found his wife's chart first, and then I was like, okay, who is this woman? And she's Michelle Martin, and she was connected to Marc Trudeau because she was his wife, and I thought, okay, this is going to be fun. This is going to blow Celestina's mind to have two serial killer, like a serial killer couple, because she was also very much involved. She didn't actually do the killing, but she helped him lure the victims in and keep them.
Is this where your love piece comes in?
No.
Okay.
That was the start, where I was like, okay, the connection charts. That's what I really want to do. I would rather do connection charts. So I still didn't really feel very good about this couple, but what blew my mind, take a look at all his penta energy. He has the 31-7, the 1-8, he has the 13, so he doesn't have the 33, but he has the 13. He has the 214 channel, and he has the 15th gate and the 29th gate. So all he's missing is gate 5, gate 46, and gate 33 to create the penta energy, to basically be a full-blown team. Although people usually talk about pentas from 3 to 5. So normally you need 3 to 5 people to create this team energy. But take a look. This is them together. They're creating a full-blown penta together. They're covering all the bases.
Dude, I have the chills in like a weird way.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Crazy.
They were like the perfect murdering duo. I'm excited to hear more.
Well, that's pretty much all I have. No.
Okay, so energetically, they were the perfect murdering duo. Got it.
Yeah. Yeah, it blew my mind. I mean, they are split after all. They're not, it looks like they're complete, but they are still a split because they're still missing, if you're zooming in, you can see they're missing either the 37, the 51, or the 27, or the 53 to make them a complete, like a single definition relationship unit. But as a team, they were, for me, it was also very crazy to see that they have all elements that a team would need to make a team move forward. So the reason why he was so prolific, he's from Belgium. Both of them are from Belgium. And they really revolutionized the system in Belgium. So there were a lot of challenges that came up with his case. The police wasn't working properly, childcare wasn't working properly, so there were a lot of elements that really didn't work in this whole scenario. And after that, or even during his trial, Belgian people realized the lack within the Belgium system. So to tell you a little bit of a background story of both of them, or of him first, maybe I did spell his name right. Dutroux. Yeah, I did spell his name right. Never mind. So his name is Marc Dutroux, not the other one that I said.
Dutroux, heard.
Dutroux. And he was born to two teachers. They were then separated when he was around, in his teenage years sometime, I think maybe 14, 15, something like that. And they were both not very nice to him. The father wasn't nice, the mother wasn't nice to him. So that already led to quite a few challenges within him. The father was often absent, and the mother apparently struggled with depression. His education, it's very broken. So he didn't really study all the way through. Like, he didn't complete school. He had a lot of difficulties concentrating, which is not really that surprising when you're looking at his head and ajna. And additionally, he probably also didn't know about his sacral energy. So he needs to be moving around and letting out all of this energy instead of just sitting around in school, trying to take it all in.
He also probably felt hella pressure with that wide open route.
Yep, I agree. So all of that, not knowing any of that, can be very difficult for a child and for parents. So when he was getting older, he started to work various odd jobs, and at some point he started his criminal career. So it started with smaller crimes, but then it started to escalate. So it started with kind of a few little thefts here and there, then drug dealing. Eventually it went up to bigger thefts like car thefts and actually drug trafficking. He's also believed to have been part of a sex trafficking ring. So that is how this happened with the kids. There are big names that are being involved in these cases as well. Like, it was not officially confirmed, but there is especially one victim who's talking about sex parties and really horrible events where they were brought, and quite famous people in Belgium were also apparently involved, but they never had any consequences from this. So he was married to another woman before, but then he got divorced in 1983. We don't really know why, but that's also approximately the time that he started a relationship with Michel Martin. Some sources say that they started the relationship before, others say after. It doesn't really matter for all of this, just that they started dating. They had 3 kids together. I have no idea what happened to the kids during all of this because they're never really mentioned again. It's just that, yeah, apparently they had 3 kids together. So I don't know if they also lived in that house. It didn't seem like it, because this guy, he kidnapped kids, and then he built a dungeon for these kids in his house. And he kept these kids in that house for months. Only 2 survived, and he did it with 2 kids before those 2 that survived. So there were at least 4 kids in that dungeon. But the 2 kids that were placed in that dungeon before the other 2 kids, they were left in that cell to die. He was taken in by the police. He was taken into custody. He was put into, I don't know if it was jail yet, but he was stuck with the police for 4 months. And in that time, the now wife of this guy, was supposed to take care of the German Shepherd that was in the house. But she also knew of the kids, but she never went down there to feed them, give them water or anything. She just left them. And apparently after 4 months have passed after he came out, he then went to go see them. And one of them had died and the other one was just about to die. But then he says that she died in his arms. It's very, very, very hard to believe that these kids survived for 4 months. And the autopsies also show different things. That even 2 weeks before the child actually died, there was still SA happening to that child. So we don't really know who kept them alive, but there must have been other people involved. So it's a very, very crazy story and horrible story. But both of them were involved, and a lot of them are even thinking that Michel Martin is one of is the mastermind behind that, and not really him.
I have no words. Damn.
Yep. And also, when you look at the psychological profile, so for him it is said that he's a psychopath. He was very good at manipulating people. He has complete lack of empathy. He doesn't feel anything, which is also interesting with his emotional solar plexus being defined. But it's also defined with the 59.6. So this channel is known to break down walls and to, it's interesting, he's got the 59.1, the preemptive strike, the femme fatale or Casanova in line 5 as well in Mercury. So this combination, 59.5 in his Mercury and his unconscious Mercury, must have really been able to lure the kids into a conversation as well. Like to kind of, normally this would be connected to flirting, but in some way he must have found the right words to convince them to get into his truck, or to convince them to at least have a conversation with him for some time before he was pulling them into the truck.
I was going to say, isn't this like this chain of two channels known to be like the nurturing and caring, the 59.6, and then the other one that's attached to it? I can't see the numbers.
This is the defense circuitry, 59.6 and 50.27. And the 59.6 is the conception part of it. So depending on which line, it's also connected. If you have the sixth line in the sixth gate in the third line, and it's connected to your 59 to a 59, it is highly likely to conceive, to be very fruitful, fertile. Yes. But also in a creative aspect. It doesn't just have to be sexual, but it can also be in a creative aspect. And the sixth line is known to break down walls, or this whole channel is very good at breaking down walls and getting people into liking them. The 2750 is more connected with this nurturing and providing a value system, like to teach kids what is right, what is wrong, like to be more of a role model and really a parent. When you're looking at human design charts, you always have to also take into consideration what happened in their past, because it does have an impact whether you move to the positive, quote unquote, aspects in your chart or the negative aspects in your chart. And in this case, then I would also include gene keys into this analysis, which I didn't do in this case because I hadn't really set my mind into talking about those two. But here we are.
He's also a quad right.
Yeah, true.
What is Michelle? She got a little mixy poo. Okay, interesting.
Yeah, those two, wow.
And this was really, in the 80s. Like, this wasn't that long ago.
No.
That's wild.
And yeah, and this really brought up a whole thing in Belgium. So one thing that happened is that one of the biggest marches, or the biggest march up to that point, happened because of him, because they really wanted to make a change in the Belgium criminal justice system and child protection system. It was called the White March, I think. They had white balloons, they were dressed in white, and it was 300,000 people that showed up for this march. So they really wanted to make a change in this whole thing, because there was really bad communication between law enforcement agencies. That was the first point. There was inadequate support for the victims' families. They were often not listened to. They were often ignored. There was at some point even police officers that went to his house while he was in custody or while he was arrested. I'm not sure which one it was. But in that 4 months time period, there were police officers that went to his house. They searched it, and the locksmith person that was there with them, he said that he heard kids' noises, like either screams or shouts or something like this, but he said that he heard them, and the police officer said, no, don't worry, it's probably from outside. So they completely ignored that, even though they could have saved these kids. And I think this is not, of course, an intentional, or I hope it is not intentional, because if it really is a child trafficking scenario situation, then a lot of very influential people are involved in this. It's not just going to be him and his wife. So it could be that the police officer that was on site knew of this and tried to kind of hide it in some way. But let's just give him the benefit of the doubt, hopefully. And he really just thought that these were kids shouting outside. And in that case, he must also feel horrible if that really happened. Because it's a human mistake on one hand. On the other hand, no matter if it's outside or not, why not just investigate and see? The other thing is that the evidence was mishandled. There was insufficient monitoring of released offenders because he was taken into prison. He was kept there for 2.5, 3 years because he had previously already abused kids. 5 kids were already abused. And that was before 1992, as far as I remember.
So that means there was no like registered sex offender list in Belgium at that time. Probably not, right? Wild.
But even then, I mean, for us in Europe, it's not such a thing to have a registered sex offender list. This is very, very American. And you can even see where they live, right? I don't know if this is something that is happening now in Europe, but there's also a lot of data protection challenges with this. So I don't know. I think in that case, you shouldn't have your data protection rights kept up, but I don't know.
Yeah, in the States, you can literally just like Google sex offenders near me. I'm pretty sure my mom did that when I was in high school to like make sure we didn't live next to any creeps. And I'm pretty sure there was one in the hood, like in our neighborhood, which was not solid.
Oh my God.
But yeah, it like tells you why they went to prison, how long they've been out, where they live. And like they're not supposed to live within like a certain radius around like the age group that they've abused, which I think totally makes sense. And I feel like honestly, if you're trying to do that, that should be public knowledge, regardless of the country that you're in, you know?
I totally agree. Yes, that is 100%. The only challenge that I see is that when you're innocent and something like this has somehow been stuck to you, because a lot of times you hear of people being like a prime suspect in something, and in the end they're cleared. They didn't do it. Some people are in prison because they were at the wrong place, wrong time. And that's the only thing. I just don't know the quota of how many people are actual sex offenders and others who have wrongfully been convicted in some way, but it's...
And who just peed outside on the side of the road, you know?
For example. Yeah.
Which is crazy because like in Cologne, there's like a pretty big like public park, and like people just like go into the bushes to pee. Like that's commonplace in Germany to like go into like the slightly wooded section and take a piss.
The other day that happened to me in a park in the middle of the city.
There you go. That
Men.
person would be a sex offender in the States.
Oh my God.
Public indecency.
Oh my God. So yeah, he was already arrested in 92, or before 92, and then he got out, and he was convicted in 89 exactly. He was convicted for abduction and rape of 5 young girls. And he was sentenced to 13 years at that point, but he was released after just 2.5, 3 years.
And they thought that was enough for him to be absolved of all of his sins? The fuck?
Apparently the reason behind that was because the police at that point was just looking at him more as a criminal, like a theft, the car theft and something like this. But I don't know what went wrong there. This should have never happened, but it did. And that led to then these other girls being kidnapped and actually held captive. And the interesting part as well is that he started out with one age group. I think he started out with a younger age group to kidnap and hold them captive, but he wasn't really attracted to them. So then those were, I think, the 2 that died in in those 4 months where he was again arrested. And a lot of people, like some people even saw him build this dungeon, and they didn't really connect the dots because they of course didn't think, okay, this is someone that is going to hold kids captive in there. But there were a lot of signs. Lots of people called in and said that he was a sex offender or that he was dangerous or something like this. But those leads were just ignored. And then at some point he was again arrested in 1996 after 2 of the victims were found, thankfully. So 2 survived, and those were also the ones that were then sharing their stories of all the things that had happened to them and how he was also really trying to convince them that the parents were not interested, they don't care, they didn't pay the ransom, and just really horrible.
Again, no words.
So yeah, you can see his chart is connected through the emotional solar plexus, 59.6 with the sacral, 34.20 with the throat, and then he has the 31.7, the 8.1, the 2.14, which is also all connecting the throat, the G center, and the sacral. So the 31.7 is often seen in dictators as well. So this is something that can either be a good leader or a bad leader. And this is something that needs to be called out. You can't just decide to be the leader of the pack. You really need to be invited into being the leader of the pack. But it can be very dominant and very horrible in nature. When you're looking at Michel Martin's chart, she has the G center, the sacral, and the emotional solar plexus. So they can connect on all 3 of these planes. But she also has the ego, the spleen, and the root defined. So he received a lot of pressure from her directly, a lot of pressure, because she has the root defined through the 38.28 and the 32.54. So, yeah, crazy intense relationship with all the penta activity and the root and the I'm not good enough from his side as well, from the ego and the holding on to each other. Like he was holding on to her through the spleen as well, not being able to let go of the things that are unhealthy, and also holding on to his victims.
Did he offend before they got married?
Yeah.
Interesting. So he kind of had this within him, and she probably just escalated it so much.
Well, let me see 1 second in my notes, because they met.
They met in 1983.
Then probably not. If they met in 80.
I recall you saying that.
Yeah. Because he divorced from that other woman. Exactly, and it is speculated that this was around the time where it started, but that's why some people say that they met before the divorce was finalized, and others say that it was just when the divorce was finalized. So yeah, you may be very right that this started with her.
It's wild what other people can bring out in you, whether it be positive or negative, right? I feel like the energies that we surround ourselves with, this case in particular, is so important, right? His life could have taken a completely different trajectory had he met another human, but he felt so drawn to her, right? Like splenically, and probably so much root pressure from her, and just got defined in so many more ways than he would have been solo, that he was just empowered to do this. But what a weird thing to be empowered to do.
Absolutely. So that was actually the one that I wanted to talk about, or we will be talking about in the next episode, because now we have made it anyways. We did it. We talked about serial killers. I cannot believe it. So the love aspect here, there are 10 love gates in human design. 10/11. So because the 10th gate actually functions as 2 different kinds of gate. There's some that are very personal in nature. So it is an I love you. And then there are 4. So there are 7 that are this I love you. And then there are 4 that are this transcendent love. So it is not a personal love, but it is a very, transcendent kind of love. And the 10th gate functions as both. So as soon as this happens, when you take a look at their individual charts, you can see that both of their G centers are defined. Not all love gates are in the G center, okay? But let's just take the 10th gate as an example. She has the 10th gate with her 34. This should give her the energy to really be able to provide herself with the energy to take care of herself, to love herself. It is also a very, as I said, it can be a very personal love, but it can also be a very transcendent love. It's in her Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. And she also has it in her Mars, so it's an energy in line 3 on top of that. It's an energy that really needs to grow and evolve throughout your lifetime. Mars is very, I always compare it to the Fool in Tarot. It's something that at the beginning, the Fool is just very naive, and then the more it moves through the Tarot, it becomes more and more wise and aware of the world. And Mars is that kind of energy. And line 3, it's making and breaking bonds, it's life bumping into you. So it's a very experimental and very, it's a line, or it's a gate that really needs to be developed throughout her life, which she didn't really manage, I would say, at least as far as I know. And he doesn't have that. He has a 34-25, so the connection is not that strong, because the 34 in him is not a hanging gate. At least in this case, it's not that strong. But he does feel an electromagnetic connection with her through the 34 in her 10. However, it is compromised as well, because she does have the 34 already. So it is on one hand a very I love you kind of energy, and feels very magnetic to him especially. So he's going to be more in love with her, at least on this, in this aspect, in the 10th gate aspect. But when you look at the other gates, the other love gates, there is also, for example, the 15th gate, which is going to create an electromagnetic connection between both of them with the 5th gate. There is also the 46th gate, which is also creating an electromagnetic connection through her. So there are many things in their chart that are very powerful and linking them together, also in a love aspect. But these love gates can also be hate gates. So it's always both sides of the coin. Because imagine if you're not able to differentiate between love and hate throughout the world. I mean, it would be beautiful if everyone would be walking around and in love with everything and everyone. But yeah, but that's not reality.
That was intense, dude. For not, quote unquote, not being prepared, you crushed that.
Well, I had read a lot on this and I had prepared, but I just didn't feel it when I was... And then just before our call, like 2 hours before our call, I was sitting here and I was like, okay, why do I not want to talk about this? And then that's why I looked at my chart and I was like, oh,
you were
okay.
illuminated AF, bro.
Yeah, and I have the 25th gate defined in line 1 through the transit in Neptune. I have which is uncovering a veil. Then I have the 59, which is in line 6 in the sun today. So I'm like, okay, I'm connected here. I want to talk about love. I want to talk about creativity. I want to... Yeah, and then I have the 5th gate as well, which you usually give to me.
Woogity, woogity, woogity.
So, yeah, it made sense to me afterwards. And that's also why you can see here, okay, Jennifer Lopez, Ben Affleck, Jennifer Garner, and their connection chart. I was like, okay, I feel happier talking about those, but now we didn't.
I kind of want to see that, though. Can we do that next week? We're going to talk about
the
Jennifer Lopez, Ben Affleck, Jennifer Garner, 2 Jennifers, 1 Ben. Thruple?
Yes.
Tri person?
What is it? Triangle? Love triangle.
Love triangle.
Well, at the moment it's again turning into more of a separation triangle, apparently. But I still thought it was an interesting connection thing to look at. So yeah, we will talk about, and next week I'm probably going to be like, no, I want to talk about serial killers. I'm joking.
Cool. Well, this was awesome. Thank you for holding down the fort, guys. I guess a little bit of real life updates. I'm physically moving apartments. So
by herself, pretty much.
Yeah. Unfortunately, my husband is down and out with pneumonia, so he made 2 trips out of like the 7 that I made today.
Wow.
So
yeah, amazing that she showed up. Anyways, I was prepared to be like, okay, at the beginning of this episode, I was considering telling her I'm not prepared, and then I just clicked record. But I said I'm not prepared, and I was ready to tell her I can do this by myself, even though I really hate doing these things by myself. I just suck if I have to talk to myself. It doesn't.
Miko, you know what we
works.
forgot to do? Intro ourselves.
Oh yeah.
We can outro ourselves.
Hi everyone. This was Celestina and Miko.
Great job. Killed it. Honestly, I kind of like the random flow intro. I think if you guys have been listening to us long enough, you probably know the differentiation in our voices. I don't think we're like most podcasters where we sound very similar. I think we sound vastly different. So this is actually probably a good thing.
Probably. And do you know what happened? Because this Riverside that we're using, it's now giving you the ability to create your own voice. So if you write a text and then you say, give me my voice, it takes, I don't know if it takes both of our voices and it just mixes it together, or if it takes your voice, because it's making the transcript with either your voice or a mix of both of our voices.
That's weird. AI,
but it doesn't take
man.
my voice.
It is like, this girl sounds English second language. I don't know if we should trust her.
No, it's for sure taking your accent.
Cool. Well, dude, you crushed it. I'm happy to support you in whatever way you need next week, too, because I'm excited to hear about the Jen Ben situation.
Cool.
The Jen squared Ben, if you will.
Wow, you must have been good in school.
Math.
Okay, well, thank you everyone for listening. Thank you so much for showing up today, Celestina, even though it's in the middle of your packing and moving.
Oh, it's all good. I'm going to go hit my bathtub for an Epsom salt bath and quell all of the tension that I currently feel in my muscles. It'll be fine.
Perfect. Okay. Till next time.
Ciao, guys.